I am the Noetherian, here with another Soulforge draft video. I've really been enjoying the new Rise of the Forgeborn draft format that launched last month, and so I wanted to share a few tips and tricks, things I've learned for surviving the new format. This is Pack 1 Picked 1. First of all, I guess the obvious first pick is Korok, Khan of Kadras. So I haven't played with Korok in draft yet. I'd love to try him out, but the main reason that I'm taking Korok is that he's a new legendary that I don't have any copies of yet. In particular, I bought a number of the pre-order packs and was able to get 7 copies of Circe, the Necrium Forgeborn, but not a single copy of Korok. So anyway, I've been wanting to play around with Korok, and this is a great opportunity. I suspect that he's good in draft, but I really don't know, and we will find out together. But let's take a minute to talk about the other cards. So Grimgaunt Predator is actually was a strong first pick in the previous format. I think he's actually gotten stronger in the new format. In particular, Necrium has gotten a number of new toys in this format. The most significant one from a Predator point of view is Spirit Leash, where Spirit Leash allows you to sacrifice a creature to make one of your other creatures much bigger. Predator's a great target for Spirit Link. Also, Necrium got some more removal in the form of Organ Harvester and Death Current. New removal at the rare level. And so it actually shows up with reasonable frequency in draft, and that also helps out Predator. So I think Predator is a great first pick. I think I would take Predator without hesitation if Korok wasn't in the pack. Turnabout is a very strange spell. I haven't gotten it to work in draft yet. Actually, I haven't gotten it to work in constructed either. I think there must be an interesting constructed turnabout deck, but I don't know anyone who's found it. So I would encourage you to experiment, but at this point in draft, I am certainly hesitant to take Turnabout as a first pick, even though it may be a fun new card. Wildfire Maiden, I've always liked Wildfire Maiden in relatively aggressive Tempys decks, and that hasn't changed at all in the new format. Think that she's a fine first pick, although not with Predator in this pack. So, anyway, I will take Korok, and we will try to draft a Tempys deck. So, having Korok, I think my favorite faction pairing would be Uterra. Tempys Uterra. In particular, Uterra has several very good level 1 creatures. Deep Branch Prowler and the new plant, the new vanilla plant whose name always escapes me, but also Swamp Moss Lurker. And Korok works really well with strong level 1 cards, because if you get the level 2 version of Korok in play, you can do a bunch of damage to your opponent by smashing them with a Deep Branch Prowler. So I know that type of strategy of big Uterra bodies at level 1 combined with higher level Koroks has been reasonably effective in constructed. I expect that something like that could work in draft. So I think my favorite pairing would be to end up with Uterra, although I do see that there's an Emberwind Invoker in this deck. And Emberwind Invoker, another new heroic. I've tried to get this to work in draft with mixed success. It's a very high variance card. If you draw it at the right time, it is absolutely awesome. Particularly if you already have other move creatures in play. On the other hand, oftentimes I draw it at an inappropriate time, and it has a reasonable body, but it's a lot of times when you draw it, the special ability is going to be useless, because you just, at least I haven't been able to stack up enough move creatures in one deck to make this consistent. That being said, I blew out an opponent with a turn 2.1 Emberwind Invoker, followed by a turn 2.1 Predator 2, followed by an Emberwind Invoker on the following turn, and those kind of games are really fun. So when Emberwind Invoker works in draft, it's a load of fun. I'd encourage you to try it out. Hesitate to take it here, because I guess there's maybe not clear synergy between the Emberwind and the Korok. I guess if you have Korok in play, you can move a creature immediately, which is maybe cool if you already have an Emberwind, but that's asking for too many pieces to fall into place to really be a reliable draft strategy. So I think I'm going to take the Grove Matriarch. It is always a solid Uterra creature, and I think I want to be an Uterra. I'm worried that if I take the Emberwind Invoker that I would end up with a next pack that has 4 cards and none of them are Uterra. And I'd really like to get the Uterra thing going this draft. So I think Grove Matriarch it is. Let's see. This is not a particularly exciting pack. Branchweaver Druid is a new swarm card, similar to Aetherhounds, except instead of making 2 mid-sized bodies, he makes 1 very small body and another larger body. So he's worse stats. At most levels, he has worse stats than the Bright Tusk Sower, but he doesn't have the adjacency requirement. I've seen Branchweaver Druid used to good effect, particularly in decks that are trying to fill the lane. Decks that have Spring Dryad or the new Dryad's Blessing can get a lot of value out of Branchweaver Druid. Not sure that I'm excited about it here, but it's never a bad pick. I think I'm going to take the Icebound Fortitude. I think Icebound Fortitude is just an incredible Tempys utility spell. Also could be used to help my Korok survive an extra turn, where getting Korok to survive an extra turn is potentially a lot more damage onto my opponent. So I'm going to take the Icebound Fortitude. Also, I found Icebound Fortitude can work well with strong level 1 bodies. You play out a 7/7, it becomes like a 7/2, toss out an Icebound Fortitude, and all of a sudden it's a big problem for your opponent again. This is not a pack I'm very excited about. I think I take the Bear Riders. I think I prefer the 16/8 over the 12/9. In particular, Korok provides the opportunity that I might be able to get a hasted Deepwood Bear Rider 2 late in the game for 16 damage on my opponent, which is kind of exciting. And this is not something I'm happy with. I guess I take the body. Ghost Scale Cobra is a reasonable blocker, has some synergy with the new poison cards in Uterra. It's a card I'm happy to have a copy of in most Uterra decks just because it's a decent blocker, but it's never something I'm excited to pick. And this is going to be a tough choice. So, Twin Strength is a very nice Uterra pump card. I've gotten, I think it's an excellent card in draft. In many decks, I'd rather have a Twin Strength than an Enrage. It gives you the same amount of total stats as an Enrage. But unless you have one particular target, like, say, a Night Gaunt or an Osieri Spirit that you really want to pump up with Enrage, then I think Twin Strength is probably better for you. I'm sorry, I said that Twin Strength gave you the same total amount of stat bonus. That's actually not true. Twin Strength is giving you more stat bonus at level 1 and 2, and then it catches up to Enrage, or Enrage catches up with it at level 3. So it's a similar spell with as Enrage. The only thing to keep in mind is that if you get behind on the board, Twin Strength is not a card you can play if you only have one creature. And that's usually not a problem for most Uterra decks that you draft, but it's something to keep in mind. So I like the Twin Strength. Lightbringer Cleric is just a great all-around Uterra creature. Happy to have one of those. Warbringer Iranti, also just a very nice utility card in Tempys. Very relevant special ability. I think I'm taking the Twin Strength here, but the Cleric and the Warbringer Iranti are both tempting. Let's see. I worry about getting a little bit too spell heavy. I'd really like to take a creature. Hate to take my third spell here. On the other hand, not very excited about either the Bramblewood Guardian or the Cryomancer. So I think I'm taking the Iranti Bolt. I'm hoping to get more quality creatures later on, but they're just not appearing for me this draft. Ah. Speaking of quality creatures, I'm very happy to have a Deep Moss Raptor in my deck. Level 1 version is very poor, but if you can get by that, it's a big body at rank 2. Also, with a Korok, it's always possible that these strong level 2 bodies will be able to get hasted late in the game and potentially close things out. So I think with Korok, I'm very happy to have big level 2 bodies like Raptor and Bear Rider. But I'm also going to want some big level 1 bodies eventually. Let's see if they maybe come through for me in the next pack. Let's see. This is probably the Hydra. Hydra is a nice card to toss Twin Strength on. Just a better body than Stag. And I don't really need the life gain. Yuck. I guess I take the body here, although I've not been happy with Sparkbrand Asir in draft. I think it's, in almost all cases, is inferior to the Ashurian Mystic. So have not been happy with the Sparkbrand Asir, but I'll take it here over the spell just because I need bodies. And actually, I really need bodies, and this draft is not going quite as well as I'd hoped, but there's still time to turn it around. Cloud Cleaver Titan, I think, is quite a nice card. Move it in, you play it out wherever you like, and then you move it into an empty lane next turn and hit your opponent. And it has, solid but unspectacular stats when it engages in combat, but it's just a good way to get damage through onto your opponent. So I've generally been happy with Cloud Cleaver Titan in draft. I think usually I'd rather have a Wind Primordial than a Cloud Cleaver Titan, but Cloud Cleaver Titan is still a very solid Tempys pick in most Tempys decks. So I will take this here. Let's see. Swamp Moss Lurker. No question I take the Swamp Moss Lurker. Like I said, I would really like this deck to have as many big level 1 bodies as possible so that I can get some use out of my Korok. And Swamp Moss Lurker remains a quality pick for all of the reasons that it was good in the previous format. And here I take the Deep Branch Prowler. This is a little bit more what I was hoping for. And I'll take an Ashurian Mystic. I think having one Ashurian Mystic in almost any Tempest deck is a nice way to get some damage onto your opponent. And Ashurian Mystic 2 in particular can be difficult to deal with if your opponent ever misses a draw. And I think I take the Hydra over the Sparkbrand Asir. Okay, so I'm doing a little bit better now in terms of bodies, which means that I'm a little bit more willing to take another spell. Wallbreaker Yeti is okay in draft. I mean, he has certainly has playable stats at level 1 and level 2. Every so often you end up going up against a defender deck, somebody who's playing like Forge Guardian Alphas. That's a very viable draft strategy in the new format, just like it was in the old format, and Wallbreaker Yeti can do a number on those type of decks. But, I mean, in most matchups, Wallbreaker Yeti is just a vanilla creature, and so I think I'd rather have either the Lightning Spark or the Dryad's Boon. Dryad's Boon's an interesting buff spell. So it basically turns any creature into a Spring Dryad. Works nice with Swarm decks. I don't have any Swarm cards yet, which reduces the value of Dryad's Boon. On the other hand, I have some good targets for Dryad's Boon. Dryad's Boon is quite nice on, for example, Cavern Hydras. But, I think I'm just going to take the Lightning Spark instead. I think it's a good utility spell, reliable damage. I think I'm hoping to be able to get a lot of damage through to my opponent during ranks 1 and 2 and the beginning of rank 3, and having this type of direct damage could be useful for closing out a game, or of course taking out a blocker. Again, none of these creatures are ones I'm excited about. I think I take Enrage. Now I'm back up to being relatively spell heavy again, and so I'd really like to get another creature. I worry about having too many Deep Moss Raptors in my deck because it's so bad at level 1, but on the other hand, I guess I'm going to take another Enrage. This might be a mistake. I think I tend to be more willing to play spell-heavy decks than some other drafters that you might watch on stream. That's probably not good for me. It introduces variance into your deck. If you have... I mean, the more spells you have, the more likely you are to get a deck that is mostly spells in a situation where you really need creatures. But, like, neither of these creatures are very strong bodies, and so... I think I'm going to take the Enrage. We'll see whether or not that comes back to bite me. This is 6 spells. Yeah, I'd like to avoid picking up spells, I guess, for the next few picks. If I can end up in the, like, 8-spell range, that's usually a place where I'm happy. Glacial Colossus here is just a... it's a card which, at level 1, is able to do 6 damage. It's a reasonable blocker. Not a card that I'm going to level in this deck, but it's a card I don't mind drawing underleveled. Another Icebound Fortitude. Okay. Here's some solid creatures again. I think I will take the Grove Matriarch, just for a reliable body. Pulling up the new Asperian War Tusk. This is one of the new Allied cards. I think that all of the Allied cards are great picks when you're in the right faction combination. Because I'm not playing Aloyan, this is just a breakthrough creature with modest stats. I would happily take it late in a pack if it appears, but it's not something, given that it's not in my color pairing, it's not something that I would take out of a 6-card pack that also has other good options. And I think Grove Matriarch is just a reliably good creature, so I'm very happy to have a second Grove Matriarch in my deck. Lycian Hydra is an interesting card. Jury's still out. I'm not sure whether I like Cavern Hydra or Lycian Hydra better. I think that, again, Lycian Hydra has less regeneration, which means that it's less good in a deck that has a lot of Enrage, Twin Strength, buff-up cards. But on the other hand, the base stats, having 5 attack at level 1 and 9 attack at level 2, base stats are better than Cavern Hydra, which, if you're not going to buff it, is quite useful. So, anyway, I have 2 Cavern Hydras. I'm not going to take another Hydra, but it's a solid Uterra pick. I'm never unhappy to have Lycian in my deck. But I take Grove Huntress, Zephyr Mage. Also, a creature like Zephyr Mage with an activated ability could work well with Korok, potentially later on. Although, I guess because Zephyr Mage 1 only targets level 1 creatures, it's probably not very likely that I'm going to have the right board set up to be able to use Zephyr Mage effectively with Korok. But it could happen. Anyway, though, I've generally liked Zephyr Mage as a neat trick in draft. It's a good way to get damage through onto your opponent by taking like your Grove Matriarch, your wounded Grove Matriarch 2, giving it mobility and going and smashing your opponent for 8 damage. So I like Zephyr Mage. Happy to take one. Here the choice is between Venom Fang or Flame Fury Shaman. Flame Fury Shaman actually is a card that's probably interesting with Korok. Again, I'm not going to, because I only have 1 copy of Korok in this deck, I'm not going to draw it all that often. But the ability to give +3 attack to any other creature, for example, my Korok, is a nice activated ability. It's not level gated. I've generally had good experiences with Flame Fury Shaman, although it's not a card, because its base stats are, pretty mediocre. It's not a card that I like to have very many of in my deck. It's a really bad draw if you get behind, because then you're just putting out a bad blocker. But in situations where you can get ahead, can get a couple of extra creatures on the board, can certainly create problems for your opponent. That's going up against a Venom Fang. Venom Fang, just a reliably good Uterra card. I liked Venom Fang in the previous format. I still like it very much. So, probably Venom Fang is a stronger all-around card than Flame Fury Shaman. I'm not all that likely to be able to get Korok and Flame Fury Shaman to work together. Therefore, certainly the safer pick is to take Venom Fang. Although, I do have 2 Enrages, and Flame Fury Shaman's with its high health, is a really good target for Enrage. You can cause cause your opponent a number of headaches with an Enraged Flame Fury Shaman. I've gotten that to work before. I think this is a questionable pick, but I'm going to take Flame Fury Shaman. I think it's a more fun card than Venom Fang, and it's one that I enjoy playing. I should not bias my choices towards cards that I think are fun to play, but unfortunately I do that sometimes. So this might cost me, but I'm going to take the Flame Fury Shaman. No question here, I take Bright Tusk Sower. Really surprised that Bright Tusk made it this late in a pack. This is fortunate for me. I'm very happy to take it. Glacial Colossus versus Yeti Warcaller. Yeti Warcaller is a strange card. Incredibly high health, not much else going for it. Works great in like an Aloyan plus Tempys deck where you've got a Battle Tactician. When I first pick a Battle Tactician, I love Warcaller, especially if I can get some Matrix Wardens going on. I mean, it's certainly a great card if you have attack power buffs. I do have some Enrage and some Twin Strength going on in this deck. I did just pick up the Flame Fury Shaman. Don't really want a second Glacial Colossus, although I'm short on creatures that have high attack at level 1. And ideally, I'd like non-defender creatures that can actually attack at level 1, but just for underleveled cards to play later on in the game, it's really important in draft, again, in the old format, also in this format, to get a number of 6 attack or higher creatures that you don't intend to level, just to use as underleveled blockers later on in the game. So I'm going to take the Glacial Colossus for that reason. Here I'll take a second Swamp Moss Lurker without question. Spore Torrent's an interesting card. Easy to overlook, but this is basically a Surge. It's basically like the Poison Surge card, but if you compare it to something like Contagion Surge, Spore Torrent has double the poison. I mean, it's 2 poison early game, which is a guaranteed 2 damage, and if you're willing to accept a bit of life loss from an attacking creature, can easily do 4 or 6 damage, which is really good for a level 1 Surge. And then it becomes free later in the game. It's just good removal. So I've been happy with Spore Torrent as removal. Works great in conjunction with Life Gain. If you're playing something like a Rune Bark, which is a new card that synergizes with Life Gain, Spore Torrent is great because generally when you use a poison card like Spore Torrent, you're accepting some damage to kill the creature slowly. So it's good removal, but the delayed removal costs you life, but you don't care if it costs you life if you're playing with like Stag and Rune Bark and those sorts of things. So definitely keep an eye out for Spore Torrent. I think it's a good card, but I take the Swamp Moss here. Spite Mage, not in my color pairing. I think the 4/1/8/3 aggressive creature, I mean, basically it's just a it's just an Ashurian Mystic that's easier to kill for the most part. So I think I'm not very interested in this color pairing. Tangle Sprout is the vanilla plant that I was trying to remember the name of earlier. It is the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 card. And so I will happily take a Tangle Sprout, and this gives me, again now, a better selection of strong level 1 bodies. Also, with the 2 Grove Matriarchs and the Bright Tusk Sower, Dryad's Boon is looking a lot better now than it did when I passed up the earlier Dryad's Boon. Nonetheless, I'm going to take Tangle Sprout because I need quality level 1 creatures. And another Tangle Sprout. And now this deck is kind of coming together the way I had hoped. So I've now got 5 strong level 1 bodies to potentially use with my Korok. Grove Matriarchs are great if I can level them. Cavern Hydra can work well with some of the buffs I have in this deck. I think this deck could turn out pretty well. Glacial Crush is a fine situational card. It is absolutely devastating against decks that want to beat you with Forge Guardian Alphas and other defensive creatures. The new Cinder Colossus, for example. So I'm generally happy to have a Glacial Crush in my Tempys deck. In some matchups, it'll be absolutely worthless, but when it works, when it works, you can just devastate certain opposing decks. And so if you see it late in a pack like this, you have to consider taking it. Stonebrand, pump up a defender spell. I mean, that's just, I'm not playing the right deck for Stonebrand. Stonebrand can be fun if you have multiple of the new Ice Mage Yeti, whose name I'm not quite getting right, but the creature that temporarily turns people into a defender works great with Stonebrand. That being said, I don't have any of the Ice Mage Yetis. I think the card, though, that I take is Feral Instinct. Feral Instinct is just... having one Feral Instinct in my deck is just a great way to get damage through late in the game. Also, at level 2 and 3, it's a decent buff card. I think it's a really close call between Feral Instinct and Glacial Crush. Glacial Crush is going to be awesome in certain matchups and otherwise pretty worthless. Feral Instinct is only good at certain times during the game. But, I've got 2 Swamp Moss Lurkers in my deck. I think that Feral Instinct is the kind of thing that could be good. That being said, I also have some aggression in my deck. And so I've got the Lightning Spark. I'm probably not going to have trouble closing out games. So the Feral Instinct isn't essential. I keep talking myself back and forth here, but I'm going to take the Feral Instinct. And now, Aerial Surge versus Strength in Numbers. I think I take the Strength in Numbers. Again, I've got the 2 Grove Matriarchs and the Sower. I don't have great... I'm not going to be able to get great use out of Strength of Numbers, but having a little more pump, again, allows me maybe to get a little more use out of my Cavern Hydras. I like pump on Flame Fury Shaman. So I think I take that over the Aerial Surge. With all the aggression in this deck, and I just picked up the Breakthrough, I'm not going to need Aerial Surge to close out games. So, anyway, this is the draft. It's an interesting Korok deck. I think I've got a chance of doing well with this deck. So come back and join me in the next video, and we will see how it plays in Game 1.